You are standing on your own land, bare dirt under your boots, loose, crumbly, the kind of ground that turns to mud every spring and dust every August. Now imagine pouring a $2 liquid onto that same patch of earth, waiting 3 days, and coming back to find stone, real stone, harder than the concrete slab under your garage. That is not a trick. That is a chemistry the Amish stonemasons in Lancaster County have used quietly for over 140 years. And it produces a surface with compressive strength measured by soil engineers at nearly double what a standard sidewalk pour can hold. I am going to walk you through exactly how it works, why it disappeared from every mainstream building manual after 1954, and why a document filed with the United States Department of Agriculture in 1908 called it the most economical foundation material ever tested on American farmland. This works whether you are building fresh or standing in a house that was put up before your grandkids were born. The first time I saw it done was on a warm afternoon outside Gordonville, Pennsylvania. An Amish man named Amish was patching a section of his dairy barn floor. No mixer, no bags of Portland cement. Just a bucket, a shovel, and a jug of something that looked like dirty water. I watched him pour, tamp, and walk away. I came back 4 days later. That patch rang like ceramic when I tapped it with a wrench. I asked him what was in the jug. He smiled the way Amish men smile when an English fellow finally asks the right question. He said, "Sodium silicate, water glass. The same thing his great-grandfather used to seal the root cellar in 1897. Now, most Americans have never heard those two words. Sodium silicate. It sounds like a chemical weapon. It is not. It is one of the oldest industrial liquids in existence, first patented in Germany in 1818 by a chemist named Johann Nepomuk von Fuchs. It is nothing more than sand and lye cooked together until they form a syrup. You can buy a gallon of it today for under $20. A quart runs about $2, and here is what nobody tells you. When that liquid touches soil that contains any clay, any silt, any calcium, it triggers a reaction called silification. The silicate ions bond with the mineral particles in the dirt and form what geologists call a synthetic sandstone. The University of Arizona ran a series of trials in 1978 on desert soils treated this way. They reported compressive strengths between 2,000 and 4,000 pounds per square inch. Standard residential concrete comes in at about 3,000. Same range, same performance, 1/10 the cost. So why did it vanish from every mainstream building book? Follow the money. Portland cement became a $9 billion a year industry in the United States by the 1950s. Every county in the country built its economy around cement plants, gravel pits, and ready-mix trucks. The Federal Bureau of Standards, which had actually published favorable reports on silicate soil stabilization in the 1920s and 1930s, quietly stopped funding the research after 1954. The last major Department of Agriculture bulletin on the subject, Farmers Bulletin 1729, was pulled from active circulation. You can still find it in the archives at the National Agricultural Library in Beltsville, Maryland. It is dated 1934. It describes exactly how a farmer with no training and no equipment can turn his own subsoil into a permanent foundation. That bulletin was written by a soil chemist named Charles S. Slichter. He worked for the USDA for 31 years. He specifically recommended sodium silicate for farmers who could not afford commercial cement during the Depression. His work was cited in 12 state extension publications between 1935 and 1948. Then it went silent. But the Amish never stopped. They kept the practice alive in Ohio and Pennsylvania because they answer to a different economy. They do not care what the ready-mix truck costs. They care what works, what lasts, and what a man can do with his own two hands on his own land. Here is how you actually do it. You take your dirt, the dirt already sitting on your property, and you screen out anything larger than a marble. You want the fines. The clay, the silt, the fine sand. You mix that dirt with roughly 1 part sodium silicate to 8 parts water. Some old-timers ran it stronger, 1:5, for heavy load-bearing work. You pour that solution over the dirt until it is saturated but not swimming. You tamp it down. You wait. Within 24 hours, the surface starts to firm. Within 72 hours, it is walkable. Within 7 days, it has reached about 80% of final strength. Full cure takes about 30 days, and by then you have something that will not wash away, will not crack and freeze thaw, and will not host termites, mold, or root intrusion, because it is essentially stone. Now, if you already own a house and you are thinking this only applies to people building from scratch, stay with me, because this next part is specifically for you. Walk down into your basement, look at that dirt floor section under the stairs, or that gravel crawl space where the moisture creeps in every spring. Look at the packed earth around your wellhead, or the muddy path from the back porch to the shed. Every one of those spots can be treated this weekend with a 2-gallon jug of sodium silicate, a garden sprayer, and an afternoon of tamping. You do not pour a slab. You do not hire a contractor. You saturate the existing dirt with the diluted solution, tamp it flat with a hand tamper or a piece of 4x4, and walk away. Come back in a week, that crawlspace floor will be sealed, the radon that seeps up through loose soil cut down dramatically because the pores are now filled with silicate glass, the moisture wicking up into your floor joists, gone. The termite highway your exterminator keeps warning you about, closed off. And you spent less than $40. I did this myself in a 110-year-old farmhouse I bought outside Millersburg, Ohio. The dirt cellar had been damp since Herbert Hoover was president. 2 treatments, 3 weekends apart, and that cellar has been bone dry for 4 winters running. I keep dry goods down there now. Flour, sugar, canned tomatoes from my wife's garden. Things that would have grown mold in 6 weeks before. And that brings me to something I need to tell you before we go any further. Everything I am sharing with you today is one small piece of a much larger archive I have been putting together for years. The heating techniques the Amish use to warm a whole farmhouse on a cord and a half of wood per winter. The cold cellar designs that keep vegetables crisp until April with no electricity. The pest control formulas that have kept their pantries clean for 2 centuries. The off-grid water systems that predate every utility company in America. I compiled all of it into a 3-volume set I call the Complete Field Vault, and there is a limited time offer on it right now that I do not know how long I can keep open. It is linked in the description below, and you can scan the QR code on your screen. This is the buried archive the ready-mix industry and the utility companies would rather you never find. That is all I will say about it. Back to the ground under your feet, because there is more to this than sealing a basement. And this is where the story gets interesting. In 1908, the United States Department of Agriculture published a document titled Bulletin Number 137, Soil Stabilization Methods for Agricultural Structures. In that bulletin, a section on page 47 describes something the authors called cold poured stone. It is sodium silicate mixed with local subsoil in a specific ratio, poured into wooden forms, and allowed to cure for 21 days. The resulting blocks were tested for compressive strength, freeze-thaw resistance, and water absorption. They outperformed the fired clay bricks of the same era in every category except one, fire resistance. And even there, they matched them. Farmers in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, and Iowa built entire barn foundations, silo bases, spring houses, and root cellars out of these blocks between 1908 and 1935. Some of those structures are still standing. I have walked into a spring house near Berlin, Ohio, built in 1911, where the walls are made of exactly this material. The Amish family that owns it still uses it to cool milk. The walls do not sweat, they do not crack, they do not spall. They just sit there, doing their job, 114 years after some farmer poured them into wooden forms. But here is the tension. That bulletin, Bulletin 137, was reprinted 11 times between 1908 and 1952. After 1952, never again. The Portland Cement Association, founded in 1916, spent decades lobbying agricultural extension services to promote their product exclusively. By 1955, the phrase sodium silicate stabilization had disappeared from every county extension pamphlet in the United States. The knowledge did not die, it was buried. And the only people who kept practicing it were the ones who did not read government pamphlets in the first place. The Amish. So the next question you should be asking is, if this stuff is so good, what are its limits? Where does it fail? Because nothing works everywhere, and any man selling you a miracle is selling you a lie. Here is the honest answer. Sodium silicate stabilization works best in soils that contain some clay or silt. Pure sand does not bond as well because there are no fine particles for the silicate to grip. Pure organic topsoil, the black stuff full of decayed leaves, does not work at all because the organic matter interferes with the reaction. You need mineral soil. Most American subsoils, the layer 6 inches to 2 feet below the topsoil, are perfect for it. It also does not perform well in constantly saturated conditions. If your ground is underwater half the year, you need drainage first. But for a basement floor, a crawl space, a shed foundation, a walkway, a garden path, a chicken coop base, a smokehouse floor, a root cellar, a spring house, a pump house, a workshop slab, a driveway apron, it is nearly, and it gets better with age. Unlike Portland cement, which starts breaking down the moment it cures and continues degrading for its entire lifespan, silicate stabilized soil actually strengthens over time as the silicate slowly recrystallizes into a denser matrix. Auburn University published a paper in 1983 that tracked treated soil samples over a 15-year period. The compressive strength at year 15 was 31% higher than at year 1. Concrete loses strength, this gains it. Now let me tell you the part that made my jaw drop when I finally understood it. The Amish do not just use this for foundations. They use it for something most Americans have never even considered. They use it to build fireproof walls in their smokehouses and their bake ovens. Because when you mix sodium silicate with dry clay dust and pack it into a form, you create a material that can withstand temperatures over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit without cracking. It is called chemically bonded ceramic. NASA studied it in the 1970s for heat shield applications. The Amish were using it in 1880 to line the inside of bread ovens. I saw one in a home outside Sugarcreek, Ohio. The homeowner, a man named Eli, showed me the oven his grandfather built in 1922. The interior lining was still perfect, no cracks, no spalling, no degradation after 103 years of daily fires. He said the recipe was simple: clean clay, sifted to flour consistency, sodium silicate at about 1 to 3 by volume, mixed to a stiff paste, pack into the form, let it dry slowly for 2 weeks, fire it gradually over 3 days. Done. That same material can be used to line a wood stove, to build a rocket mass heater core, to seal the joints in a masonry chimney, to create a fireproof hearth pad, to build a forge lining, to make heat-resistant tiles for the back wall behind your kitchen range. Every one of those applications in a modern home would cost you hundreds or thousands of dollars in specialty refractory products. The material to do it yourself costs less than a pizza. And here is the finale. The one thing I was not sure I would share, because it sounds too good to be true until you understand the chemistry. Deep in the archives of the Ohio State University College of Agriculture, in a bound volume of extension pamphlets from 1926, there is a document titled Notes on the Preservation of Farm Buildings by A. Graham. Graham was the founder of the 4-H movement, a name most rural Americans still recognize. In that pamphlet, on page 9, he describes a technique he learned from what he called the plain farmers of Wayne County. It is a wood treatment, not paint, not stain, not varnish. A one-time application that penetrates the wood, bonds with the cellulose fibers, and turns the outer layer of any board into something closer to petrified wood than lumber. The formula: 1 part sodium silicate, 3 parts water, 1/2 part borax, dissolved in warm water first, brushed onto raw, dry wood, 2 coats, 24 hours between coats. What it does: it makes the wood fire resistant to the point that it will not sustain a flame. It makes it rot proof because the silicate seals the pores against water. It makes it termite proof because the borax poisons them and the silicate makes the wood too hard to chew. And it lasts. Graham reported barn boards treated in 1898 still solid and paint-free in 1926. That is 28 years exposed to Ohio weather with a single treatment. I have applied it to the south side of my own barn. 3 years in, the boards look better than the day I brushed them. No graying, no cupping, no woodpecker damage, and we have plenty of woodpeckers. This is knowledge that was published by the founder of 4-H in a state university document funded by American taxpayers and then quietly allowed to fall out of print. It is not a secret because someone locked it away. It is a secret because nobody profits from telling you about it. There is no industry association promoting a $2 liquid you mix in your own kitchen. But the Amish knew, and now you know. You just recovered something that was taken from you, not stolen with a lock and key, but buried under 100 years of marketing louder than the truth. A $2 liquid, a bucket of your own dirt, and an afternoon of your own labor can do what a concrete truck and a contractor charge you thousands to accomplish, and it will outlast them both. If you are the kind of man who believes that real knowledge has been quietly pushed aside to protect someone else's profit margin, you already know what to do next. You do not sit on this, you try it. You start with 1 square foot in your crawl space, or 1 board on the back of your shed, and you see for yourself. Now here is what I want to hear from you. In the comments below, tell me which application you are going to try first. The basement floor, the crawl space, the wood treatment on your barn or shed, the fireproof lining, or something I did not mention that just clicked in your head. Type it out, I read them. This audience does not talk much, so when you leave a comment, it matters. And if you are ready to stop watching from the sidelines and start recovering the knowledge that built this country before the utility companies got hold of it, subscribe. This is not a channel. It is a quiet movement of men who are done paying for what their great-grandfathers made for free. Next week, I am opening up something the Amish do with rainwater and a single copper coil that produces drinking water cleaner than anything you can buy in a plastic bottle, and it runs without a pump, without electricity, and without a filter cartridge in sight. You will not want to miss that one. Before I let you go tonight, I want to sit with you a little longer because there are pieces of this story I glossed over. And if you are going to actually pick up a bucket and try this, you deserve the full picture, not the trimmed version, the whole thing. The parts that will save you a weekend of frustration and the parts that will make you understand why this knowledge disappeared in the first place. Let us go back to 1935. That is the year the Portland Cement Association, headquartered then in Chicago, poured somewhere around $1.2 million into a public relations campaign aimed directly at farmers and rural homesteaders. $1.2 million in 1935 dollars? That is roughly $27 million in today's money spent in a single year to convince a man plowing 40 acres in Iowa that the packed earth floor in his root cellar, the same floor his father had walked on, was somehow primitive, backwards, a sign that he had not yet joined the modern world. They printed pamphlets. They sent traveling demonstrators out on the rail lines. They took out full-page advertisements in the Farm Journal and Successful Farming and Country Gentleman, and the message was always the same: concrete is progress, earth is poverty. If you love your family, you pour a slab. Now I want you to sit with that number for a moment. $27 million in 1 year aimed at rural men. That is not a marketing budget, that is a war chest. And the reason they spent it is because they knew, the executives knew, the chemists on the payroll knew, that silicate-treated earth floors were not only cheaper, they were structurally superior in almost every measurable way that mattered to a working family. Warmer in winter, cooler in summer, naturally antimicrobial once cured, non-cracking, repairable with a bucket and a trowel by a 12-year-old boy. And they could not sell a single bag of Portland into a household that already knew how to make one. So they buried it. Not with a shovel, with saturation. They flooded every rural mailbox with glossy paper until the word silicate sounded old-fashioned and the word concrete sounded like the future. And it worked. By 1955, 20 years later, the packed and treated earth floor had all but vanished from American farmhouses. Not because it failed, because it was out-marketed. Now, I mentioned earlier that you can pick up sodium silicate for around $2 a pound, and that is accurate as of the last time I checked at a couple of ceramic supply houses and a chemical distributor in Ohio. But let me give you the specifics you actually need before you start. The grade you want is what is called type N sodium silicate, sometimes labeled as water glass, with a weight ratio somewhere between 3.1 and 3.22. That ratio matters. It refers to the silica to soda proportion, and type N is the sweet spot for construction and soil stabilization. If you go lower, toward a 2.0 ratio, you get something more alkaline that is better suited for detergents and paper sizing. If you go higher, you start losing the ability to properly dilute it with water. Type N, remember that. Write it down if you have to. The dilution ratio for treating a dirt floor is roughly 1 part sodium silicate to 4 parts water for the first coat, and then 1 part to 2 parts water for the second coat about 24 hours later. You are looking at using approximately 1 gallon of undiluted silicate per 100 square feet of floor, split across those 2 coats. So for a 200 square foot crawl space or root cellar, you need 2 gallons of concentrate, which at commercial pricing runs you somewhere between $40 and $60 total. Compare that to a concrete pour for the same square footage, which even at the most conservative contractor bid is going to run you between $800 and $1,400 once you factor in the labor, the delivery fee, the finishing, and the vapor barrier they will try to sell you underneath. And here is the part that will really turn your stomach. That same contractor, if he knew what you now know, could treat your dirt floor in about 3 hours of unskilled labor and charge you $600 for it and still be giving you the deal of a lifetime. He does not do it because there is no material markup. He cannot mark up a $2 bucket into a $200 line item on an invoice without you noticing. Concrete lets him hide the margin in the mix, the delivery, the rebar, the forms, the finishing labor. Silicate strips all of that away and leaves nothing to inflate. That is why your contractor has never mentioned it, not because he is a liar, because his business model does not survive the mention. Let me tell you about a man named Charles Earl Sears. Sears was a soil chemist working out of Ames, Iowa in the late 1920s, and he published a paper in 1931 in the Journal of the American Ceramic Society detailing the compressive strength gains of silicate-treated clay soils. His findings were remarkable. He documented untreated clay with a compressive strength of around 200 pounds per square inch, reaching, after silicate treatment and full cure, compressive strengths above 4,000 pounds per square inch. For reference, standard residential concrete is rated at somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000 pounds per square inch. Sears was showing, in a peer-reviewed publication, that treated dirt was outperforming poured concrete by 30 to 60% in compression, and his paper was cited exactly 11 times over the next 15 years, and then it disappeared from the mainstream discourse entirely. You can still find it if you know where to look. University Microfiche Archives. A few engineering libraries that never purge their older holdings. But the average civil engineering student graduating today has never heard the name Charles Earl Sears, and that is not an accident. The German army rediscovered silicate soil stabilization during the Second World War, using it to harden airstrips in Russia and North Africa, where they did not have the logistics to haul in concrete. A single Junkers transport plane could carry enough sodium silicate concentrate to stabilize a runway that would otherwise require dozens of concrete trucks. The Soviets picked it up from captured technical documents and used it extensively in the post-war reconstruction of Eastern European infrastructure. There are apartment blocks in what used to be East Germany, built in 1952, sitting on silicate-stabilized soil foundations, and they are still standing straight while newer concrete pad foundations across town in the western sectors have been jackhammered and replaced twice. I want to talk about the wood treatment application in more depth, because I mentioned it briefly, but you need to understand what you are actually doing when you brush sodium silicate onto a piece of pine or oak. The liquid soaks into the cellular structure of the wood, penetrating anywhere from 1/8 of an inch to nearly 1/4 inch, depending on the species and the moisture content of the board. Once inside, it reacts with the carbon dioxide in the air and the natural acids in the wood to precipitate a form of amorphous silica, essentially microscopic glass, throughout the wood fibers. That treated wood will no longer burn in the way untreated wood burns. Put a torch to it and you will see the surface char, but the flame will not propagate. It will not spread. The silica acts as a heat sink and an oxygen barrier at the cellular level. Firefighters who trained on treated timber in Norwegian testing facilities in the 1960s reported that a fully silicate-treated pine 2x4 could sit in a 500-degree Celsius flame for over 40 minutes before showing structural failure, whereas an untreated board of the same dimension failed in under 6 minutes. Now, the same treatment also seals the wood against moisture ingress, which means rot resistance, which means insect resistance, because termites and carpenter ants cannot digest silica-impregnated wood fiber. They will chew a small amount, taste the mineral, and abandon the board. Farmers in Australia have been treating their fence posts with sodium silicate since at least the 1890s, and there are posts still standing in Queensland from before Federation, over 125 years in the ground, that show no measurable rot at the soil line. The untreated fence post next to it, put in the ground in 2015, is already soft at the base. Let me give you the exact process for treating wood, because there is a right way and a wrong way. You want the wood as dry as you can get it. Below 12% moisture content is ideal. Keyline dried lumber from a lumberyard is fine. If you are working with rough sawn wood from a local mill, let it air dry undercover for at least 6 months first. The wood needs to be able to accept the silicate solution, and waterlogged wood will not absorb it properly. Mix your sodium silicate at a 1:3 ratio with warm water. Warm, not hot, somewhere around 100 degrees Fahrenheit. This helps the silicate penetrate deeper. Brush it on liberally, working with the grain, and be prepared to see the wood darken as it absorbs the liquid. Apply a second coat within 2 hours while the first coat is still slightly damp. Let it cure for a minimum of 72 hours in a dry, ventilated space before exposing it to weather. The chemical reaction that hardens the silica inside the wood needs air circulation and time. Rush it, and you get a surface coating that flakes off. Do it right, and you get a treatment that penetrates deep and stays for a century. The fireproofing application on interior walls is another one worth spending some time on, because I glossed over it before. You take sodium silicate diluted at about 1 to 2 with water, and you either spray it or roll it directly onto drywall, plaster, or exposed wood framing in an attic or basement. The coating cures nearly invisible, adding just a slight sheen to the surface. But that thin film will delay flame spread on a wall assembly by a factor of 3 to 5, according to testing done at the Underwriters Laboratories facility in Northbrook, Illinois in 1978. Those test results, by the way, are still in the UL archives if you want to look them up. Report number 78NC2247. The findings were never widely publicized because at that time the intumescent paint industry was gearing up to sell you fire retardant coatings at $50 to $80 a gallon, and sodium silicate at $2 a pound was a direct threat to that entire product category. I want to address a counter-argument I know some of you are already forming in your head, because I would be forming it too if I were you. You are thinking, if this stuff is so good, why do professional soil engineers not use it? And the answer is that some of them absolutely do. It is called chemical grouting, and it is used all the time on major infrastructure projects. When they had to stabilize the soil under the Leaning Tower of Pisa between 1999 and 2001 to keep it from falling over, one of the techniques employed was silicate injection into the foundation soils. When crews stabilize soil around subway tunnels in New York and London and Tokyo, they inject sodium silicate solutions to solidify sandy or waterlogged ground before excavation. The Federal Highway Administration has published technical bulletins going back decades on the use of silicate grouting for embankment stabilization, so the engineers know, the specialists know. The knowledge has never been lost at the professional level. What has been lost is the transmission of that knowledge to the ordinary household. The idea that a man could treat his own crawl space with a 5-gallon pail and a garden sprayer on a Saturday afternoon, that idea has been systematically scrubbed from every consumer-facing publication for the better part of a century. And when you ask why, follow the money. A homeowner who stabilizes his own dirt basement does not call a contractor, does not buy concrete, does not hire a waterproofing company, does not purchase a sump pump, does not pay for a dehumidifier system, does not book an annual pest inspection. That homeowner has stepped out of an entire economic ecosystem that depends on his continued dependence. Now let me talk about the smell, because if you actually do this, you should know what to expect. Sodium silicate has almost no odor when it is wet. Slightly soapy, slightly mineral, nothing offensive. As it cures over the first 24 to 48 hours, you may notice a faint alkaline scent similar to a wet chalkboard or a freshly poured concrete slab. This dissipates completely once cured. It does not off-gas anything toxic. It does not leach anything into your indoor air. Compare that to the polyurethane sealers, the epoxy coatings, the vinyl vapor barriers that a contractor would install in the same space, which off-gas volatile organic compounds for months and in some cases years after installation. Your wife will thank you, your children will breathe easier, your dog will not develop the mysterious respiratory issues that so often appear after a basement remodel. On safety, because I want to be clear-eyed with you, sodium silicate is alkaline. It has a pH of around 11 or 12 in concentrated form. You need to wear gloves when handling it. You need to wear eye protection. If you get it on your skin, wash it off with water and a mild vinegar rinse to neutralize the alkalinity. It is not corrosive in the way lye or industrial cleaners are corrosive, but it will irritate skin on prolonged contact, and it will absolutely damage your eyes if you splash it in your face. Treat it with the same respect you would treat a strong laundry detergent. Ventilate your workspace. Keep it away from children and pets during application. Once cured, it is completely inert. Food safe, in fact. It is used as an anti-caking agent in certain food processing applications and as a sealant in some water treatment plants for drinking water infrastructure. The temperature of your workspace matters more than most people realize. Sodium silicate cures properly between 50 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Below 50, the reaction slows to a crawl, and you may end up with an incomplete cure. Above 90, the surface can skin over before the liquid has properly penetrated the substrate, leaving you with a shell that flakes off. Spring and fall are ideal for this work. If you are in a hot climate, do your treatment work in the early morning before the day heats up. If you are in a cold climate, wait for a stretch of warmer weather or heat the space with a portable propane heater for a day before and a day after application. I want to leave you with one more story before I close. There is a man I know of in eastern Tennessee, in his mid-70s now, who treated the dirt floor of his tobacco barn with sodium silicate back in 1974. He paid about $11 for enough material to do the whole floor, roughly 600 square feet. That floor is still there. It has been walked on by farmhands, driven on by a small tractor, spilled on with hydraulic fluid, snowed on when the barn doors blew open in a storm, and it looks, according to his own words, better today than the concrete pad he poured in his equipment shed in 1988. That concrete pad has 3 visible cracks and a corner that has spalled off. The silicate floor is smooth, hard, and still bearing weight without complaint. 50 years of continuous use, $11 of material, no maintenance, no sealers, no repairs. That is what real value looks like. That is what our great-grandfathers understood before the marketing budgets rolled in and told them their own competence was a form of poverty. Real value is quiet. It does not need a warranty because it does not fail. It does not need a service plan because it does not require service. It just sits there and does its job for decades while the flashier, more expensive alternative crumbles next to it. So, when you go to try this, and I hope you do try it, start small. 1 square foot in an out-of-the-way corner, do it right. Follow the ratios, give it time to cure. Come back in a week and take a hammer to it. Feel how hard it has become. Understand in your own hands that what I have been telling you is not theory, it is not conspiracy. It is chemistry that has been sitting on the shelf in plain sight, waiting for a man with enough independence of mind to pick it up.